My name is Zaki, and of course, if you didn't know already, I'm an aerialist, I'm a circus performer, I coach and choreograph, and I work in the cabaret circuit here in London. I'm originally from Singapore, but I've been based here for quite some time now. And I wanted to introduce you today to my mini-series where I talk about my creative process as an artist, how I create my acts, how I search for inspiration during lockdown, how I'm frustrated and angry at things in the industry or just things that I can't control. So yeah, this is it. So before we get started, I just want to say thank you to Liverpool, who have been very, very supportive in encouraging me to talk about my story and my creative process, as we're all kind of going through a shit time in terms of trying to find inspiration as pole dancers, as aerialists, as just performers in general, or just people who want to express their creativity during lockdown. We're all strapped at home. And today I'm going to give you 3, maybe 4 top tips for act creation based on like my own experience. First tip is about figuring out your story and narrative. Of course, this is very personal to everyone, and it takes a lot of time to figure out what you want to say as an artist. It's the most important thing. It goes over music, it goes over costume, it goes over everything else. And I'm going to talk about my Aladdin story, of course, today. And the Aladdin one was a cute clip. The Aladdin one was, of course, based on my frustration and fear surrounding being a non-white aerialist in the industry. So a lot of the castings I saw, or castings that I actually even went to, primarily focused on the white body as the ideal. So roles were just not made for me, no matter how talented I was or not talented I was, because it wasn't there. It was more of a frustration of how, no matter how good I was, I still couldn't fit in. And of course, we've been making so much progress in the past years or past months. But of course, there's a lot more work to be done surrounding diversity, but that's a whole different video. So yeah, so with Aladdin, it was about, you know what, I was like, how can I play a character that everyone recognizes, that they won't question me about? Okay, let's do, popular characters, movie characters as tropes. So for me, it was, okay, Aladdin. I'm brown, Aladdin's brown. I haven't seen Aladdin, but I was like, yeah, this could totally be a thing. So understanding like, okay, you've seen me as Aladdin, you understand right from the get-go that that's my journey. So to summarize, I think the first thing you need to think about is understanding tropes and narratives that you can use, but also that means something to you. So for me, it was Aladdin. Being a brown person, bringing a brown person that people could understand was very important for me, because a lot of people don't really know where I'm from or what my ethnicity is. And that's not, obviously, shouldn't be important, but I wanted to kind of play on the fact that people didn't know where I'm from and make it into an act. So that would be the first thing. So number 2 is finding music. This is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. What I tend to do is find the overarching story, because you can find a great piece of music, but if it doesn't say anything about you or your performance, people aren't going to remember who you are as a performer or what your act was. The main important thing is finding the story that makes more sense. What is the theme? What do you want to say? And then finding music that will fit that narrative, because music should help you tell your story rather than trying to just have a good beat. So another tip for finding music is something I picked up from watching a lot of cabaret performers and drag queens, actually, which is pulling from 4 or 5 different songs. You don't want to just use the whole song and just be like, okay, we're done here, because there are parts of the song that don't really work with your routine, or it's a little bit slow, or it has an outro that doesn't work. So for the Aladdin routine, I did, of course, Arabian Nights, which is classic Aladdin, into Troy Boy Do, which is such a banger. It's a jam. I love that. But of course, it has that kind of follow through Aladdin vibe, which makes it, I think, for me, I think it makes it more interesting for me as a performer, to be able to have kind of levels. So you're starting, with this character, and then it goes to something a little bit more hyper sexual, I guess. So tips 3 and 4 is costume, and of course, how you have to keep evolving your act every time you perform it. So the first time, it's never, going to be what you see in your head 100%. There's always going to be things that didn't go according to plan, but you learn from it. So with costume, I'm very, very fortunate to have amazing friends who are super talented, who have helped me. And of course, the purple boil suit was from Michelle, who is a dear friend, with these detachable sleeves because I wanted kind of a reveal as I went along. And I initially actually performed it with like this pink sparkly top that was kind of basic, and a brief that we kind of just used. And then of course I met Derek from Bangham London, and in this beautiful, look at this, I mean, this beautiful crystal thong that this is my first time in a thong actually. And I guess the rest is history. But the point is, you're always evolving as an artist or as a performer. Even if you're starting out, the first time will never be the best time. You can always revisit the act to make it better. Loads of performers have a couple of acts, so maybe 3 or 4 acts they use for a whole year, that they've perfected, or they feel is strong enough, and they'll just keep using that act every time. Well, for me, at least, every time I do it, I try to see what else I could do differently to keep it exciting or to be better, because creating an act is hard work, like it's really, really hard work. Just to recap, the 4 tips for act creation. The first one, obviously, is figuring out your story and your narrative. That's the most important one. For me, it was Aladdin. It doesn't have to be super personal, but as long as you pick a theme or narrative that people can follow. Number 2, of course, is finding music. If you haven't tried kind of combining 1 or 2 or 3 different songs together, I suggest you try that and try to find a theme. I find that really fun for me. And make sure it kind of stays back to your theme or your narrative. So number 3 and 4 is costume, and keep evolving. So you want to make sure that nothing is set in stone. Whatever it is, no one knows what your act is, so you can always change it. Again, like as you can see, like with costume, you can start with something that fits your narrative or your story first, and then you can kind of change it as you go along, and it's totally fine. Every time you do an act, maybe try it with your friends if you're not at a point where obviously we can't perform right now, and see what they think, and then you can always improve as you go along. The act can exist in different forms. So let's say you're a pole dancer, but they want a floor act, or they want a chair act, or for example they want hoop. Try taking the story and moving it to different forms. It doesn't have to exist only in one apparatus. It can exist on the floor, it can exist in the air, it can exist in a video, especially in this time. So be exploratory in trying to tell your story through different mediums, I would say. So these are my 4 top tips. Hopefully you found that helpful. And thank you for bearing me for my first video of this mini-series. And again, thank you so much to Liverpool for supporting me. And hopefully stay tuned for my next video. Bye!